honestly, like, I think the stuff you go through, that's inevitable, but suffering's optional. I tell people all the time, if you call them to give me sympathy, call my mother. That's just how I am.
Hi, this is Patrick.
And this is Laura.
And you're listening to This is Cancer.
Brought to you by Siteman Cancer Center at Barnes Jewish Hospital and Washington University School of Medicine in St. Louis. National leaders in cancer. I think this is going to be one of Patrick's favorite podcasts to record because he loves to do everything in sports analogies.
Perfect.
So,
Perfect.
Our guest today is Mr. Kelly Chase, whose voice you just heard, who is a former Blues player.
I appreciate it. I feel lucky to be in St. Louis, and I've been here a long time, so I'm pretty fortunate, not just for having the opportunities I've had in St. Louis, but for the way I'm treated. But I've been pretty lucky. I played with a lot of Hall of Famers, and for a guy that wasn't a very good player, I got to play on some pretty good teams.
Dr. Ramzi Abboud, I'd love to hear what your official title is at Siteman Cancer Center and what you have done for Mr. Chase. I'll just keep calling you Kelly now.
You can call me
the formalities are over.
I've
just
been
Kelly.
called a lot of things.
Call me whatever you want. Just be nice about it. I'm Ramzi Abboud. I'm faculty at Washington University in the bone marrow transplant cellular therapy group. We focus on blood cancers, leukemias, chronic, acute, and other bone marrow problems. And, our kind of run the gambit. We can do, it's a big program, so everything from chemotherapies to stem cell transplants. And I get to take care of people from all over the region and really the country and the world.
And I think that if people have followed you at all, Kelly, that you've done interviews in the media. The big Puck Cancer event was just in April of 2024 of this year, raising, $600,000 for cancer research?
Yeah, I'm sure it'll be a little north of that after we get everything in. But yeah, that's pretty close.
Pretty impressive number. It's not like it was $60.
Well, it turned into a larger event than maybe what we had kind of started, but we were lucky. We had a lot of support. But I think Doc will agree that I think when you get there and you look around and there was 4,000 people, and I think it was kind of like, wow, I've done a lot of these and I was amazed by it. Mm-hmm. The participation. I think you guys probably looked around a little bit and went, holy.
Garth Brooks was there, Dierks Bentley.
Garth.
Those are kind of big names.
Yeah, Sean Payton.
Yeah.
Garth is a little bit of, it's like traveling with Elvis.
Oh, gosh,
like when he get in the mix and I kept pulling him back to the wall saying, come on, cowboy. And he had security there, both off-duty, undercover guys and police officers. And he's in there and he goes, no, just get in the muck and get it over with. And I think he took pictures for 2.5 hours before he left and jumped on his plane and left. And so that was nice of him.
The other thing I think that was interesting for me about the event was I don't think anyone knew exactly what it was going to be. Maybe he did, and he maybe dropped some hints about it, but I didn't really think about it that much. And he gave me, a bunch of tickets to hand out, and I gave some of them to my colleagues. I gave some of them to my friends, and within 20 minutes of being there, everyone was just like, oh my God, I didn't realize what you guys are doing here. Mm-hmm. And this is pretty cool. And, then over the next couple of weeks, seeing other people that weren't at the event but heard about it through different, either media outlets, were really just the level of appreciation for what we're doing at Washington University and at Siteman is something that when you're in it, you don't fully, you don't always think about how special the institution is because it's just your job. And, I think that's something that Kelly and the group that he put together sort of brings back to the forefront. And not only is it energizing for us, but it brings together people who want to support the mission and gives them an opportunity to kind of get involved. So that was something that was kind of neat about it. I think it had some legs during and after the event that I wasn't really expecting it to have.
Can we start with what started you on this entire journey in the first place? What was going on with your body? And just to explain, because I'd like to talk a little bit more about the type of leukemia you had isn't super common either, correct? So can we start with what was going on last
Well, I don't know anything about that.
Well, I looked it up, and apparently it's not.
I didn't look it up. And I think that it started with just I couldn't get rid of an infection in my knee and my ankle, and I was at our place in Arizona, and I just said, look, I'm going home because this is no way. This is miserable. And I had an infection in my tooth, and I couldn't get rid of it with antibiotics, and something seemed off. I just felt like I was off. I said, this is just not a quality of life that's worth. I'm going to go find out what's wrong.
Yeah, we got a phone call on a Thursday that someone noticed there was something off on the blood work and wasn't exactly sure what to make of it, but wanted it looked at. And we said, most of the time these are non-urgent issues, but sometimes they are, so we try to be vigilant. And one of our trainees actually, Veronica Guerrera, took the call, kind of went over it with me, and I took a look at everything, and it just didn't smell right. So we had him come in the next day, and we got kind of a broader battery of tests and told him, we don't know what this is, but these are some things it could be, and whatever it is, we'll deal with it.
I don't know if you remember this or something. You said, like, I don't know who you are, and I don't know anything about hockey, but there was two people in there with me. They seem to think you're the toughest guy that walked on the soil of St. Louis, so we're going to make you better. Are you okay with that? And I'm like, yeah. And then I remember, I don't remember much about that whole, there was a 2-week period where I was really sick. But I also remember Doc asked me about, do you want to know any numbers or prognosis? I'm like, no. There's a winning team and a losing team, right? Let's get on the winning team. Yes. Mm-hmm. He said yes. I said, let's just get me on the freaking winning team. And then the second thing was more about, if I go down, get on the internet and go down that rabbit hole, there's nothing I'm going to see in there that's going to make me feel any better doing, So I don't know. I think a lot of people, I'm sure your patients all do it.
I'm like a bunny on a diving board that just jumps right in and goes all the way down, all the way in to find every piece of information I can get.
What I tell people is I'm not going to tell you not to get on the internet because you're going to do what you're going to do. But just call me and let's talk about what you find out.
Yeah.
Because that's the most important thing. And it's just not something you can wrap your arms around.
No, you can't Google
with any of these cancers. It's gotten too right, and we've gotten too good at subdividing different diseases. And so, what's true about one acute myeloid leukemia is not true about another. Really, brass tacks. The first decision point is risk stratification, and so everyone with AML has either adverse, intermediate, or favorable risk disease, and that's based on what we can figure out about their mutations, and that's where we're always moving forward, and that subdivision of diseases that I was talking about. And then the second decision point is the patient eligible, meaning are they well enough to get intensive therapy? And those two things together help us decide what the first step's going to be. When we first met him, we didn't know anything. So it's kind of like, listen, this is what this could be, but let's just get you out of here. We'll do all the testing. We'll know the answer in a week or two, and then we'll talk. Mm-hmm. Obviously, Kelly had other plans and got sick in the meantime, so we brought him in and a little bit early. But that's very typical of this journey. We try to do what we can when people are outpatient in the comfort of their own homes or in their own environment. But invariably, people end up in the hospital.
Can I ask you one question about the rest of your family?
Sure.
You're going to say no, and I'm just like, well, let me ask you another one. What did they go? Did they Google? Did they ask? Or was your wife like, well, that's not going to work for me?
No. I'm sure that they did, or I'm sure my oldest son, he actually came home and kind of took charge. But the funny thing about it is I have this thing where I do a lot of speaking engagements, and I talk about reading the paper. And I said, when I was on the plane, I would be in the card game, and the players sat right behind the first class seats, or we don't really have that on the private planes, but the kind of the row behind management, and the card tables were there. I played cards. I would watch forward into the plane, and if we hit turbulence and the pilot just kept reading the paper, I'd just go back to card game because I was like, well, we got this under control. If you start reaching for seatbelts and masks, an air mask, I'd be a little nervous that we're in trouble. So I have this thing where I talk about that at a lot of these speaking engagements that I do and just say, just read the paper. act like, just read the paper. If you're leading anybody, just read the paper. And nobody needs to know about the turbulence. And so I've always had that kind of philosophy and saying, and it was funny because when my kids came home, they came home and prior to Christmas, kind of surprised me to be at the hospital one weekend. They all play hockey. My oldest has done college now, so he was able to fly from his job and be remote. The other two one's up in Canada playing, the other one's playing at ASU in Arizona. So everybody converged in the hospital. When they left, I found out that one of them had said, that's the first time I've seen where I wasn't sure Dad could read the paper. Mm-hmm. So I'm sure, that they probably, I'm sure they Googled it or did their, a little bit of homework to say, they are in college and capable of running a computer, which I'm not half the time. So I'm sure they did do that, but they were, I have 3 boys, and I don't think I think they handled it like very, I think they very grown up, and then I don't want to say professional at it because there's emotions involved, but I think that they especially as I got stronger, knew that I would just said he's going to be okay because he's too stubborn to, do whatever.
Family dynamics are different. Yeah. And also a lot comes down to just what environments you're in when you interact with families and patients. And I never saw his sons at an office visit, which is a lot of times where the big conversations happen. Mm-hmm. And then also with Ray, we had a couple of times where we could speak separately and, feel out where she was and what she needed to know and when. Mm-hmm. And, they were all very calm the whole time. Yeah. And, they were worried about you, but they weren't, pulling me aside, trying to ask me about what the future held, although I know that that's all they wanted to know. And I don't know, it's kind of an understanding of listen, this is going to play out, it's going to play out. We're going to just kind of put our heads down, walk forward. And
it sounds like you're setting the tempo.
I had prostate cancer, and I never told anyone. And I went to the treatments every morning, and my treatments were at 7 in the morning.
Was it radiation treatment?
Yeah, and I went to the treatments, and the funny thing about that is my wife had never met the doctor. So after 6 weeks of this,
she did not know you had prostate cancer?
She knew, but I'm like, you're not going to know. Just, I'll be fine.
She was the only one you told?
No, I told a couple people, but really a really small circle. I didn't tell my mother. I didn't tell my family back home. I didn't talk to anybody about it. So the funny thing is Gretzky says, you got to go ring the bell. You got to be there when he rings the bell tomorrow. Well, I mean, I just had my last treatment. Nobody knows whether, has it worked or not worked? And I'm like, I'm not ringing a bell. And he goes, and he talked my wife, Raylyn, into going and videotaping it. And so he goes, no, we'll have it, in the fall for the NHL for Hockey Fights Cancer, which is in November. This is July 6th or 3rd or whatever.
Of 22 or 21, something like that?
Yeah, a few years ago. I don't know. And anyways, the whole thing was they're quietly talking about it at a place we spend our summers. And they're going to have this little congratulations, my last treatment party. I don't know about it. My wife comes in for the first time, my last treatment. I do this little ring the bell. I just I'm doing a thing because I really didn't want to do it. And I'll tell you why. And my wife sends it to Wayne, who gives it to Ty, who does his social media, and tells Ty, we're going to use this for the Hockey Fights Cancer. Ty thinks he's supposed to post it. It's July. He posts it. I can tell you 10:13 on the day it happened, my phone went like nuts to the point. I never told the Blues. I work for the Blues. I never told anybody.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, my mother wants to strangle me.
Oh, man.
I got my
right when you said you didn't tell your
home.
mom, I was like, oh.
Isn't that funny how that goes?
Gretz, what do you do? And it wasn't Tyson Nash or one of my kids sent it out. Babe Ruth sent it out, like
Right.
Gretzky sent it out. Like, it's like it went everywhere. And I was like, I go, Gret. And he goes, Ty, what the hell are you doing? And he thought he was supposed to send it out. Anyway, everyone kind of, so I think after that session, they were probably a little bit like, he's going to keep it to himself anyway. He's not going to talk about it.
Yeah.
And look, it sucks. And I'll tell you this honestly, like I think the cure is tougher than what you're feeling when you get it than the actual disease. The cure can be tougher, and so like that pain is and the stuff you go through, that's inevitable, but suffering's optional. Like, how long do you want to whine about it? Honestly, and not to take anything about anyone who's had cancer or still has it, but like I tell people all the time, if you call them to give me sympathy, call my mother. Like that's just how I am.
Yeah.
And so I think my kids would have been wasting their energy trying to convince me that I should feel bad because I had cancer.
You just don't really want to give it any more life than it already has, too. Like my dad used to always say, I'm not going to give cancer the time of day. I'm not going to waste my time on it.
Well, the thing is, too, about ringing the bell, which one of the nurses, like, just completely, like, made me stop because she said, well, I want to be here when you get back and find out everything's good and you ring the bell. I go, I'm not ringing a bell. And she goes, what do you mean you're not ringing the bell? I said, I don't know. It's like winning a fight on the ice. You give a guy a good licking on the ice and you get up and show him up, eventually that's coming back to punch you in the nose.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm not doing that. I'm not showing up cancer. So I'm not ringing the bell. She goes, really? What about all those people that don't get to? How about you ring it for them? And I was like, oh man. Now you walk out of my room with that. I go, get back here. And she turned around. She goes, no, you think about that. And she walked out and I was like,
mic dropped you. And she was
my
like,
God. So now I have that in my head about, what she said. And, but I don't know. I don't think about it too much. And I sympathize and empathize with everybody that's had it or going through it because I feel awful. But it's not how I could get through it.
Yeah.
By doing that. That's not how I don't have that in my being.
Yeah, people get through it differently, I mean,
Really?
Yeah. So did you ring the bell the second time?
No, I haven't rung any bell. We just found out a week ago that we
Sure.
The bells are very complicated, and people are different with it. And I don't think I'd ring the bell, so I definitely get it. The other thing is if you're not ever going to be able to ring the bell and you hear the bell a lot, that can be tough too. So, but I do think the bell's a good thing, and it does celebrate. It's as much for the caregivers as for the patient.
Yeah.
And people often misconstrue that ringing the bell means you have beaten cancer. It is symbolized as you are done with the treatment for that particular time.
Yeah, you made
in your
it through the
cancer
treatment,
journey,
which
right?
is tough enough.
I love that. Yeah,
I mean, that's the difference. It's not like, oh, I'm a survivor, so now go ring the bell. It's this role of what I had to do in order to fight this currently, and there might be another is finished. So it's a completion ring of the radiations or the chemos,
And
right?
I don't love the metaphor or analogy of fighting and battling. I think that can be useful for people, but I also think it brings in an element of effort, which is important, but it isn't everything, and some kind of failure if things don't work out the way we want them to.
Yeah.
Whereas it's just that we're not good enough on the treatment side yet, and some people, a lot of people, are just going to not have the perfect ending with a cure and walk away from it, and that doesn't mean they've failed in some way. And I think there's times where that's a useful way of thinking about it: fight, battle, war. But I also think it's not the perfect way to think about cancer.
Right.
There's no perfect way to do any of this. That's kind of another thing that I'm learning is what works for one person won't work for another. There's no one way to look at it. It's just across the board, everyone doing their best to get through something that's probably one of the hardest and worst things that they're going to go through. It's everyone's just doing their best.
One of the things that I kind of take the most seriously in my job and in a way take pride in, honestly, is each patient and family has to walk their path. and they should only walk their path. And that journey will be so different depending on the disease, how the treatments go, the complications, the result. And we can see the tea leaves a lot of times, but for our whole, portfolio of patients, but you don't want patients to walk the journey that they don't need to walk. And so some of it is protecting patients from certain realities at certain times, and how to parse out, what information and is necessary at different times. And so I'm not exactly sure I'm saying that right, but that's such an important part of what we do. Is this is what we need to know right now. We can tell you anything you want to know, but so much depends on, the way you say it and, what you provide. And so I think that's a big part of it too.
I think that's a really interesting part of what you guys have to do that I don't think a lot of people notice or appreciate. It's something that through my own journey with cancer and my dad's that I've come to appreciate. Like, I've been in that game long enough to have recognized, 5 years ago you told us this, today you're telling us this. It was true at both times, but the way you chose to dole out that information is, I told you what you needed to know at that time. Like for me, it was, we got to get through this test or get through this surgery or this treatment. It wasn't until I think 3 years after I had first had cancer where they told me that a reoccurrence of the kind of cancer that I have typically means it's uncurable. I didn't know that for 3 years. I did not need to know that. In the first 3 years, I just need to get through those first 3 years. Now I know that, and it's something I can kind of digest and put in perspective. But like, I think that's a small example of maybe what you're talking about of like, let's not hit this guy with all this right now, or or he's not interested in knowing this and he doesn't need to. It's not going to help.
It's not a small example. That's a huge example, and I think a great one. And that isn't meant to be in a patronizing way.
Yeah.
And I don't believe we are that way. But you're right. Your mechanic can't teach you how to fix your car. He can just fix it, and he's going to tell you some of what you need to know. And I think it's kind of the same thing with that. And it's an important part of maintaining patient and family's abilities to continue and remain hopeful and just keep moving forward.
So I really want to get into, if you don't, if you're comfortable with it, your time in the hospital, because I know you became, for lack of a better word, a cheerleader for a lot of people. But I was wondering, Dr. Abboud, if you would mind giving us kind of the explanation that you gave Kelly about how his benefit, Puck Cancer, fills a lot of holes that people wouldn't realize. That you guys are in the trenches all the time, and being able to take a step back at an event like that and see how much good it can do for how many people. How did you kind of explain to Kelly what an event like that can help, or how an event like that can help?
I think that's to be continued, to be honest with you. I mean, he didn't ask a lot of questions. He kind of said, listen, I believe in the mission. I know this is a world-class institution. We bring in more NIH dollars than almost any other institution in the country for cancer. Our clinical trial enrollment is, really among this very tiny group of institutions. And so he knows that, and he knows that the money is going to be put to good use. But what I'm hoping we get a better awareness of in the community is exactly how big the apparatus is and how important the research apparatus is at WashU. And so just the number of people that are highly, highly trained with specialized knowledge, specialized skills that are coming in every single day and dedicated to the mission of both basic, meaning laboratory research, and clinical research is really amazing. What's interesting about what we did with him is really pushing the boundaries of, I don't know that we've ever talked about this, but pushing the boundaries of what the standard of care would be for his type of cancer, and whether increasing dose intensity will lead to a better outcome. And so there's a lot of research that's been done in the type of cancer he has, but it's rare, and not all the research is in 100% agreement, or, really more often it's like this trial did this approach, this trial did something slightly similar. So how can we combine aspects of both that we think will be best? And that's always, sometimes complicated.
But when you knew you were headed into this fight, you said, I'm bringing my Peloton bike in. And you said, I'm going to do 100 push-ups or sit-ups a day.
Yep.
Yeah. And you said, I'm going to do it. And you said, well, I mean, that's a great goal, but I'm not sure if you're going to be able to do it. So
he actually said, you're going to be sleeping under that bike in 3 days.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But
I lost some money on it.
Yeah.
You still owe me a buck over that, buddy.
Who carries cash? Can I Venmo you?
Right. Most people we've talked to on this podcast are like, well, I went and I had chemo 1 week. I was off. It was like every 3 week. You were 7 days and then how many off?
He had a pretty rough start too, before we even started chemo, which is typical.
What was going on, which is why you found found the cancer.
It turns out you need a bone marrow to really survive and be healthy. So, given that his bone marrow was so sick when he came in, we had some rough go at the beginning. But
well, I made a bet with him that we're talking about, and I said, listen, if my count gets to it, I'm going to ride this bike 30 to 45 minutes a day. I'm going to try and walk, 7 to 10 miles in here, and I'm going to do 100 push-ups.
Wait, you're going to do that all in one day, all things?
I'm going to do 100 push-ups, 100 sit-ups a day. So I had a calendar on the wall, and I would write down. And sometimes after I rode the bike, it's weird how you can ride the bike for 40 minutes and not be as tired as doing 15 push-ups.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
15 push-ups, get in bed. Oh, my God, I'm exhausted. Do 4 more. An hour later, do 11 and try and get 100 in a day. And then if I did more, I was kind of banking them thinking, he's already told me there's going to be days where you're not going to be able to do this. So I went 20-some days and 28 days in a row on the bike.
Incredible.
And I'd done all my push-ups and all my sit-ups. But my numbers had come back, and I think he was away at a seminar or speaking at something, and I was telling the other doctor, hey, I'm supposed to get out of here. Now, I made this bet with, I had this conversation with my doctor, and he's like, yeah, okay, well, he'll be, and I'm like, no, listen to me. Because at this point, I'm emotionally getting, and I think it's a little bit of the tug of, and I don't mean this in the wrong way or anything, but I think there's a little bit of emotion that comes with, I think people around town have always seen me as a guy that's been, a tough guy or a
You were
strong
known for your
person.
fights in hockey, right?
Yeah, but more like a strong person, and personality-wise, I'm not much of a whiner.
Yeah.
And I just think there was some pressure to, I was putting on myself, not other people were putting on me, but there was a lot of asks coming in. Can you do this interview? Can you do this?
About your cancer.
Yeah. And a guy I fought 11 times in hockey.
And how many times did you win?
All of them.
Of course.
So
Let me get that in there.
I'm laying beside him. I'm laying in bed, and he's at my bed. I wake up, and I look, and Stu Grimson, who's this massive guy, is sitting beside me in a bed. I go, Jesus, I must be sick if you're here. I said, and I sort of, he laughs, and I said, You better get it over with now because you're 0-11, and if you want to win, this is the best time for you to do it.
That's so nice.
and he starts laughing, and he goes, Chase, I'm going to kiss you on the lips right now, and there's nothing you can do about it. And so he's joking back and forth with me, and he just said to me, hey, what happens? He goes, you got to make time for you, You got to don't worry about all this other, all this other shit that's going on around you. You got to make time for you. And I said, I do. I'm fine. And he's like, yeah, I know you're fine. Now, listen, and he repeating himself about, hey, like, what do you got for you? And I said, what are you talking about? He said, well, let me ask you, if you get out of here today and you go down and get in your car and there's a guy sitting on the street and he asks you for $1 because he's homeless, and you don't have $1, what are you going to tell him? And I said, I just tell him I don't have $1 to give today. And he said, try it. Just try it. And I go, what? He goes, try that once in a while. Because you have all these people pulling at you, asking you, and you feel obligated to return calls and to go to the Blues game and I did that to myself. and nobody was putting pressure, but I did it to myself. And when he said that, I was like, yeah, and I think it changes a little bit of how you feel and what you have to do to get through it yourself. And everybody understands.
It's an interesting dynamic because you meet the person for the first time and you say, we're going to sort of be together quite a bit for the next few months.
Cancel 6 months.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so with him, it became very obvious very quickly that he was going to overcommit to saying yes to things. I mean, even I think it was the third day he was in the hospital and he was like acutely ill. He was already planning the NHL to come up and do an interview with Siteman. And I was trying to figure out, who needed to be aware of it and how to get it through. But I had just met the guy. And so I would go up there, and every time I went up there to see him, there'd be 5 people in the room who had known him for 30 years and were like his best friends in the world. And I'm trying to, obviously I'm younger than him, and he's accomplished, more in his little finger. So I'm trying to counsel him to start taking care of himself and saying no to some of these things. But, I'm acutely aware that I'm the new guy in the room. And the other thing is, like, for Kelly, that brings really a great value to him, being that person that's reaching out. So it is a fine line. Yeah. I mean, he needed to do some of it, but and I'm glad his friend, had that conversation with him, because it's just empowering you to be a little bit selfish and walk that line of, okay, well, I want to do this. This is good for me. Or this one's so important, I do need to do it. And like, maybe we can give this one away.
So what are the next steps with Kelly to say, like, what type more information? Are you just going to keep watching every month until it becomes every 3 months and 6 months?
It's going to be exactly what you said. It's going to be following with him every month and then every 3 months and every 6 months, and just, hoping that this is the end of our working relationship.
Well, I think one of the interesting things that you said was, like, everybody has their own course of how they handle it. And I think, like, because I am the way I am, or my personality is the way it is, it doesn't mean that it's going to be effective mentally for everybody. Yeah. Like, but I think the recognition there to just, to leave me alone and let me, that was my way, and other people want to lay there and get better, and as they rest is their therapy, or whatever it is, whatever it is that's effective that for them is that, I think you have to just listen to the doctors and the people that know what's going on. I had an interesting conversation with, and I'm completely name dropping, and I don't mean it that way, but I had an interesting conversation with Lance Armstrong, and he said, listen, no matter what you believe in, what God, whatever it is, religion, whatever it is, who you speak to, the most important person that you have right now is your doctor. He said, and I actually asked him about the bike, thinking that's what, I read his book and thinking, well, he goes, I just took it in there for therapy. He goes, because by the time I was done my treatment, I was riding it like a 6-year-old. But when I knew it was time for me to go back in, I got healthy enough to be riding it. I don't know if he said 180 miles a day or 120 miles a day or whatever it was. Again, and the reason I did it was because that's what I've done my whole life. And that's what I needed to do to be mentally prepared for what I was doing. But that was for him, and he didn't ride it because he thought it was healthy, or he thought it would move the chemo around in different spots, or, and I didn't do push-ups, sit-ups, walk, and do the bike because I thought, oh, this is going to make me better. All of a sudden, I'm going to be a fitness person, an athlete out of the hospital. I did it because it gave me something to get up for. It gave me something to make sure that I had my mind wrapped around, and I knew that I was going to be healthier for it if I just stayed with it. So everybody's got their own path, and I just think that the ability for the doctors and the people in there to recognize that they do such a good job of recognizing that everybody's going to be a little bit different.
Well, on that point, it is hard in there. I mean, what did you do while you were in there? Because I know you tried to reach out to patients while you're in there to give them a boost or do something.
Yeah, I think that I knew when there was hockey fans. I had the young girl next door where the parents came in and talked to me, and it so happened I had brought a couple jerseys in there for a couple of the nurses that I knew, whose one's father was, in South County, that was a huge fan, and talked about the cup and that. So I brought in a jersey. I got the Blues to make a couple jerseys, and then I went to see the girl next door, and she was kind of not quitting, but she wasn't very positive and really down. And we went in and tried to help her a little bit. And lo and behold, Braden Shen showed up to see me. He's captain of the Blues. Shows up to see me, and I'm like, "Hey, dude, I need you to do me a favor." And I had some stuff to sign there, and I went in her room, and she was like, she couldn't believe he was standing in there, and like I didn't need to be there because she was enamored by the fact, younger, 23-year-old girl, that obviously that's her area. Shanner sat in there and talked to her for about 25 minutes, and then came back in my room and said, "Hey, dude, I got to get going. I'm late." And I said, "Thanks for doing that." And I think there was a fireman. I think at one point he struggled, and
Did you say drop and give me 20?
No, I asked him how come he wasn't working out since he found out, and he's told me, and I said, "Man, dude, you'll run into a fire and help somebody you don't know, and in any area downtown, and yet you've got two beautiful daughters and a wife, and you're not fighting for them. I don't get it." And it kind of straightened him out a bit, and then he started going to the gym, and I keep in touch with him to this day. And then there was other people in there. I mean, not to speak of anybody else's cases, but he's got Doc had a case in there where there's just struggling to find the right strain for a girl or a lady that was a huge Blues fan. And it's hard because, she's having a tougher go. So it's not like things, so you try to go in there and utilize if it matters, and then there's people in there that don't know who you are or give a shit, so it doesn't matter. It's okay. You just say hi to them in the hallway and keep walking, and doing your laps, and just try and be active.
Well, I know you're a humble guy, but I just want to commend you because I think it's incredible to be in there going through what you're going through. I mean, you got to worry about yourself, and you're worrying about patients in the room next to you. So the ability to get through it yourself and still lend strength to people around you is amazing.
Well, I think that first of all, when you play in the league, I think you have an obligation to give back. That's the first thing. The second thing is I wasn't a very good player, and I got to play a long time, and I have a lot of things to be grateful in St. Louis, the way I'm treated. And so I think a lot of that goes back to just trying to do the right thing with people for as long as I've been here. Because, again, it would have been – if I was the guy that wasn't doing the right thing, then I would have been easily replaced as a fourth-line player or whatever. And I think, if you're a headache to the team and the organization and you're in that role – it's just easier for them to find someone else to do it rather than, so, and again, I've had a tremendous amount of respect for the NHL and what it's given me. And I think you have an obligation to give back. So while I appreciate what you said, I think it's just more of something that you should do. And it happened, this little fight, I don't mind fighting anybody. I just like to see the size of them. And I didn't really know the size of this guy when Doc told me. It was like a little bigger fight than I was probably prepared for at the time. But
I read last night on hockeyfight.com because I was like, oh gosh, if he's going to start using sports things, I'm going to be like, 176 fights was what they said.
In the NHL?
In the NHL, 176. And then
355 in pro. Somebody told me that a week ago. I did a show, and I was like, no, that can't be right. And the guy goes, well, here's the list. And he showed me the list, and I'm like,
So just think, if you joined like a Duffer League or something, you get 10 more under your belt, we can make a calendar.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
That's right. That's right.
I think I'm just as soon going to stick away from that business for a while.
I'm curious. I'm sure you learn something from every patient that you work with and how they deal with things. But is there something that you each learned from each other going through this process together? Given that you had to work, you were managing things much more than someone that goes to chemo every 3 weeks.
Jeez,
Go ahead.
Ooh, tough question.
Yeah, Jesus.
I know my answer right away. Like, first of all, whether he was like, at first I don't know whether he would come across as cocky or confident. Either one I like. Okay, and so I knew, like, I felt comfortable right away when he said, I'm going to make you better, and this group is going to be a part of. We're all going to do this. This is a good team. So I learned that right away. I also, like, I know his compassion for people, because he a time or two had asked me to see a patient or whatever and said, gee, I don't have the best results or best news to give that patient, so if you don't mind, they're a huge hockey fan. And I think carrying that home, and I've talked about that with my wife, is tough every night. And then the last thing is that there's a lot of ways for these doctors to be wealthy or do things that are, I think, financially better than what they're doing, and they have a compassion for people or they wouldn't do it, and I learned that. And so for me, that was the things I took from. I can't say enough good things about Siteman, the people that were there. I tell people wherever I am in the world how lucky I am that I have, or that we have that in St. Louis.
Yeah.
What I've learned from my patients is just, I tell people that no one will ever understand what you're going through. That includes me. There's a very small group that will really understand. But, so I try to tell people that I'm proud of them, and that, the trust that they put in us is really humbling and amazing. And, I'm constantly learning that can be a two-way street of, it really is rewarding for us on our side to take care of people, no matter how the story ends. And, with Kelly specifically, he's been very generous with his time and his family and his relationships. And that's been, really meaningful to me.
And I was a great patient.
Yeah,
I wasn't
never caused any trouble.
Just get that on the record.
Right.
Great patient.
We can joke around about it, but no, we've asked a lot of you, and you've done it, and so.
You probably brought a lot of humor and a lot
I was really hoping you're going to hit him there and go, no, you really were awful.
Yeah.
Just the worst.
Yeah, you were the worst.
Oh,
I have a
poor
feeling.
nurses, like, I'm sure
They're used
there
to
was
it.
just
They
days
are.
where they were like,
I have a feeling you were
this
kind of like that teenager that didn't always listen sometimes, when the mom was like, I told you that this might happen. And you were like, it's fine. I'm indestructible.
Clean up your room. Get your port off the floor.
That's right.
I don't know. I know that
He knew which boundaries to push.
Sure. Well, I know we got to get you guys out of here.
Yeah.
Just for the record, I think the relationship between the patient and the physician is more important than anything. It's more important than a Peloton bike in the room. But it's like a buddy cop dynamic. It's like a new partner you didn't know what you were getting until you find out you have cancer, and it forces a bond upon you. And it's very clear that you guys had a great one through your treatment, and I'm really glad that you're able to get paired up with a doctor like Dr. Abboud and Siteman, and I'm just thrilled for your success with puck cancer and your finishing of your treatment, and can only wish you the best going forward. Thank you guys both for
appreciate you guys
coming in
having
and
us.
doing this today.
Thanks for listening to This is Cancer.
Brought to you by Siteman Cancer Center at Barnes Jewish Hospital and Washington University School of Medicine in St. Louis.
National leaders in cancer.
For more information on Siteman Cancer Center, go to siteman.wustl.edu and be sure to leave us a review and like and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts.